You should be seeing my screen now. We are talking today about the science textbook Caravan Prep, really focused in on some tools that we have to assist you in evaluating your science instructional materials as you go into second semester and start really diving into those materials and particularly attending some of those textbook caravans that are across the state. So I'm Amanda McCammon, and I am with STEM Synergy and Keep Indiana Learning. And, sorry about that. I think I just unshared my screen. Give me just a second. So like I was saying, I am Amanda. I am with STEM Synergy and Keep Indiana Learning. And STEM Synergy is, for those of you that don't know, is the STEM leg of Keep Indiana Learning. And we are a STEM-centric community of practice. We deliver data-informed services, high-quality PD, resources, and support in lots of different ways. Obviously, all STEM related in some component, but we do so through support to districts, schools, programs, and organizations across the state, really in an effort to allow for our combined effort to have greater impact than just the separate sum of our STEM efforts. So today, we are going to be honing in on those science textbook Caravan tools that our team has worked to develop with our STEM Synergy Expert Network. I'm a longtime educator, mainly here in Indiana, a little over 17 years at all the different levels, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom as an administrator, a CT director, and an assistant superintendent. I also was at the Department of Education for a couple of years under Dr. McCormick as the Chief of Workforce and STEM Alliances. Since then, I've been providing support in lots of different ways across the nation. My work with Keep Indiana Learning is as their STEM Synergy Coordinator, and I also am the Indiana STEM Ecosystem Lead. So just a little bit before we jump in to the content for today, a little bit about STEM Synergy in terms of what we have to offer on our site. If you've never been to the site at Keep Indiana Learning, definitely go and check it out. Lots of great resources across the entire Keep Indiana Learning site, but specific to the page for STEM Synergy, you will be able to access lots of professional development resources and tools there. Once the tools we're going to talk about today are posted live, this is where you'll go to find those. I will send it out as well as soon as we're ready to release it, which really should be within the next day or two that should be posted. But we will release it back to everyone that's registered for today's session as well. And then also I'm going to be dropping some links into the chat that I talk about today. So I'll make sure to grab those before the end of the session or come back to those at another time. But on the STEM Synergy site, if you go there, you're going to see lots of things around free events as well as some for pay events. There are links to already vetted resources as well. We have a newsletter that comes out every other month. So definitely click on that newsletter sign up button if you've not done that already and sign up to get that sent into your inbox every other month. Lots of great resources, both from like a program perspective, if you're trying to fund a program for STEM, or if you're looking for just additional high quality resources or connecting with the network. I mentioned the expert network for STEM Synergy. There's actually a place there on the website that you can engage with the network. We have a little over 400 members across the state of Indiana that engage in the STEM Synergy Expert Network, as well as the Indiana STEM ecosystem kind of merged together. And you can actually access that listserv of all of those individuals that already know the value and importance of STEM and are ready to jump in and engage in whatever way necessary. So definitely check that out as well. We also have some assessment tools on the website that you can access. One highlighted here on what you're seeing on the page is the Indiana STEM Needs Assessment. This is a tool that's open access and allows for schools to really dive in a little bit deeper into the components that the State Department of Education sees as that really high level quality for STEM education as it relates to STEM school certification. So obviously, that's the bar, right? That's the best of the best. And so that assessment allows schools to really determine where their gaps are as it relates to kind of that expectation to be able to meet that bar. Even if you have no intent of going after STEM school certification, it's still a really good measure and a way to kind of see where you stand. So definitely check that out as well. So for today's conversation, our main two objectives are to make sure that you know what tools are out there that have been created by the NGSS, and where to access them, and essentially what they are, basics, right? We're not going to dive into them because that could be a day's worth of additional sessions, but at least know how to find those and what they are. And then the most important piece of today is really for you to become aware of the modified versions that we have created, that the STEM Synergy Expert Network has created to support educators at these upcoming textbook caravans. So what and why? Obviously, if you're here, you know that Indiana has adopted new science standards as well as computer science. I always tell DOE that I'll mention the computer science standards as well, because it sometimes takes the back burners because of the science standards. But we have these new science standards. And even though most educators, as they should be, are utilizing them currently in this school year, they are not going to be assessed on iLearn until next year. And so many schools, because of the timeline of when they were actually approved by the State Board of Education last summer, but as you know, as educators, most of us have already selected the instructional materials that we're going to use in the fall prior to that, or already have those things coming in the summertime. So a lot of schools are really leaning in on these textbook caravans that are coming up to make selections, knowing that next year they're prepping to take that iLearn assessment under these new standards in the spring. So that's the what and the why, is really because of the new adopted standards that were approved by the state board last summer, knowing that assessment is coming up next school year. This year's science assessment for grade 4, 6, and bio are on the old standards, the 2016, but next year they'll be on the new ones. So we're really wanting to make sure that, our educators are able to have the resources they need to be able to instruct under these new 3D, this new framework, and these new 3D standards for science. Some of these slides are actually from a presentation I did previously. I'll show you. It's on the STEM Synergy website as well. So if you want to dive deeper into the NRC framework, which is where these standards are based, or some of this additional content specific to the standards, then I will show you where to access that as well. So again, going back to the what and the why with those new standards, the shift is really around the fact that we love it in the STEM space because it's a focus on inquiry, problem solving, storytelling, phenomena, teaching with phenomena, huge, huge, huge component of these new standards. Less rote memorization and about, teaching to the test and memorizing facts, things like that. You have that 3D instruction that we really like in the STEM world as well. So those are some of the key components around that framework that were pulled into the development of the standards. Keep mentioning 3D, and these are the 3Ds that we are talking about when we talk about these new standards. Again, not going to dive into these today, but there are some great sessions that are on the Keep It in the Learning side if you want to dive into these. And there's lots and lots and lots of resources as well on the Learning Lab from DOE, and also just through the NGSS site. So for today, one of our objectives was to make sure that you knew where to find and what tools there are directly from NGSS. So as we know in Indiana as educators, Indiana doesn't really adopt like a national set of standards and they just take it verbatim. They always kind of what I call Indianize it or Hoosierize it and tweak it a little bit. So there are some very small differences in the Indiana science standards and just if you want straight NGSS. However, you really can still lean on heavily the NGSS resources and tools that are out there, and there's a ton of them. For today, we're just honing in on really two of them that I want to make sure that you're aware of and where to access them. There is a third one that is an archived tool, which is the Peak one. But the Peak one was really redone and is now called Equip. And you can still access Peak, but Equip is really the one that you would want to use. So the two we're going to talk about with NGSS, and I'm going to post the links in the chat, would be the lesson screener and Equip. So the first one is the lesson screener from NGSS. And this one is similar content to Equip, really doing similar things, but there's fewer criteria. So it is intended to be like a shorter, modified version of Equip in a way. The lesson screener is really intended for that more quick review of a learning sequence to make sure that it's right on track. It's intended to be used in more like of an informal review. There's not a scoring component to it. And it's only really for evaluating instruction that extends over several class periods or days. It's not designed for like thorough vetting of lessons and evaluating units that are like long sequences of instruction, hence the name lesson screener. So it is a shorter tool. It is a little bit more user-friendly than the Equip, because the Equip is a monster. It's lots of really great information, but it is pretty large and in charge. So lesson screener is definitely a shorter version tool that you can use from NGSS, and it's a great tool, but it is still a lot of information. And when we talk about like considering, what can we use at these textbook caravans to help make some kind of quick decisions and narrow the field a little bit based off all the things that are out there in front of us, it would still be tough to use lesson screener because it's still a lot of information, but it is a great tool that's out there from NGSS. So Equip it's actually called the Equip rubric for science, and it provides criteria by which to measure how well lessons and units are designed for the NGSS. The purpose of this rubric and review process is to review existing lessons and units to determine what revisions are needed to provide constructive criterion-based feedback and suggestions for improvement to developers. So this is actually what they use if someone were to develop something and they're seeking to align. They would provide feedback based off of this rubric. It's also used to identify examples and models for teachers to use within and across the states, and also to inform the development of new lessons, units, and other instructional materials. So like I mentioned, Equip is a pretty large monster. I'm actually going to show you here before we move on to the input from the field. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So you should be able to see my screen here. And I'm going to show you, and I'll also drop the link in the chat again as well. So this is the Equip rubric, and if we zoom in here, you can get just a real quick glimpse of how in-depth, which is great for the purpose, but it is very, very in-depth, and it's a pretty large undertaking. Definitely is the process that you should go through to comprehensively review curriculum that you're going to adopt, instructional materials that you're going to adopt, walks you through step by step. It's very well done. It's just a really, really big lift for our educators to walk through this entire process. Especially when you're talking about textbook caravans and making some kind of quicker kind of decisions. The Peak is the other one that I talked about. This is the one that is archived. You can still access it. I'm not going to dive into it, but I will drop the link in just so you have it. And then the one that we really leaned in heavily for the development of our tools, I'm going to show you. What we leaned in heavily on was this lesson screener from NGSS. This is really that quicker view tool. I'm not going to actually open up let's see, actually, if I can, let's Equip. Yeah, I think we have to do a download. So let me see if it'll do a quick download for me here. All right. So this is the lesson screener tool. We actually, in the tool development that we did for you all, we pulled heavily from this. So the content that you will end up seeing in ours, it's like we use the same language. It's the direct content from this tool in regard to the 6 criterion and what you should be looking for, questions you should be asking, etc. So this is where we're pulling the content from, so that there's no question in the tools that we're going to share with you today that the content is what you should be looking at, because the content comes directly from the NGSS lesson screener tool. But as you look at this lesson screener tool, and as an educator, thinking through what we could potentially develop that would be beneficial to the field, and very user friendly in the situation we were, really aiming for, which is those textbook caravans. We were looking at this lesson screener tool and thinking, are teachers really going to grab this lesson screener and walk through a textbook caravan and be able to make enough sense of what it is that they're seeing in this tool to do anything with it? Or is it still just a little bit too much? Again, great tool, but in looking at this, it's still pretty heavy, right? There's still a lot to look at in here. When you would be trying to assess in a setting like a textbook caravan setting. So that's what we heard from the field. We were hearing that they were, looking for materials, wanting to find a tool that, and we're really looking for, asking for us to provide input around recommendations for tools that they should be using when they go to these textbook caravans, or when they're making just that initial assessment of all the different resources and instructional materials that are out there. What should they be considering? What should they be looking at? And we kept coming back to these NGSS tools, which are phenomenal tools. And everyone really out there, all the tools that we looked at really aligned back to those, right? But we really didn't have anything that had that ease of use that they were looking for, but was still tied back to the NGSS tools. They felt like the NGSS tools were just too long. It was just too much, right? To take it to a textbook caravan. And going into a textbook caravan, they weren't even sure they were going to be able to walk away from that saying, this is the single curriculum or instructional resource. This is who we want to go with. This is the direction we want to go. But they might have various ones. And then to think, man, we have to go back and really go into these huge tools to assess which one we think is going to be the best. They needed a way to kind of, like I said, narrow the field, right? Narrow their focus from all of the different vendors and textbook companies that they were looking at. So they really didn't want to have to deep dive initially at that caravan without, being able to kind of narrow the field first. So they had communicated that need to us for something aligned but shorter, that ease of use piece that I keep mentioning. They wanted something that if they wanted to print out a version of it, great. They could print it out and use it. They could print it out and reuse it. If you end up going to a conference or something and you wanted to look for some additional science resources, you could still use these tools and have a printed version of it to be able to reference. Or you could use it on your phone or your laptop or your tablet or whatever it is that you're using as a device, that you could pull up a digital copy of it and still be able to walk around a caravan and really leverage this tool in a way that you felt like you had something guiding you and guiding your questions as you walked around that caravan. So that's really where, that ask from the field came from, and why we felt like it was really valuable and important for us to develop something. So this is how we answered. We developed two tools that they're both one-pagers. It was a little bit difficult to get them down to one-pagers, but we created them in a space that's really a single page. So we have the quick reference tool, and then our second tool is these claims and guiding questions. So it's NGSS claims and guiding questions to ask publishers and vendors. That's the second tool. And I'm going to open these up and show you live really what they are and how to use them here in just a second. But within those tools, you'll notice that there are some additional links at the bottom that will actually take you to some additional resources that we put together. Again, content is directly from NGSS. We're just trying to pull out the threads that are most important for you all to have quick access to so that it's super user-friendly for you all as you step into this Caravans. So these are the two tools that we ended up moving forward with in the development. So I'm going to open up the tool now. So you can take a look. Oh, and I thought I had it pulled up. Give me just a second here. I'm going to check the chat, and I am going to make sure everyone has been admitted to the room. So give me just a moment here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick. And at this time, I am also going to repost a few of the items I mentioned, excuse me, into the chat. And then I will pull up the tools themselves here and take a look. So this first link is just the STEM Synergy link. I'm also going to link out the lesson screener from NGSS that I just showed you, as well as the full equip rubric. Again, a lesson screener is that shorter version. The equip rubric is the larger version that you would want to use. You can find, I'm not going to link Peak unless someone asks for it. You can find that pretty easily on the website with equip. It'll mention it. This last thing I have not talked about yet, but I'm going to go ahead and link into the chat, which is the link to the registration for all the Caravans. I'm going to show you that here in just a minute as well. So give me just a second here to pull up the tool. I apologize. I thought I had it open already. All right, great. So I am going to reshare my screen here. All right. Okay, so here's what we are looking at. So this first page that you're seeing is what we're just calling the Science Resource Analysis Quick Reference Guide. So again, there's a little bit of a caveat here at the beginning that will tell people in case they're picking this up and not, seeing this presentation, what this is. And then it's K-12 designed for K-12 educators for that initial analysis for science-related instructional resources. Again, that it was developed from the content provided from the NGSS lesson screener, and it's really designed to be that quick evaluative or quick evaluation of a set of science instructional activities and or assessments that could extend over several class periods or days. So that's really what that lesson screener is. Again, this tool is not designed to be used to be that thing that you use to fully vet a resource. It is not really sufficient enough to claim, oh, well, I walked through this and used this tool, and I know that these resources are fully designed to the NGSS. That's where you really need to jump into that NGSS lesson screener and the equip rubric. Again, that this is derived from that content, but is really designed to be an easy to use tool for our educators as they walk into these caravans or a conference and things like that, looking for materials. Or as that first look, even if they're finding materials online or somewhere on their own, and they want to kind of do a quick look of whether or not it would align to the new Indiana Science Standards via NGSS. So here's what we're looking at with this first tool. You can see there's a QR code at the top. I'm not going to make you listen to it here with me live today, but there is a QR code that will take you through just a little audio tour of how to use this tool. It's really mainly what I've been talking through today in this session. So don't feel like you have to scan that at this time. But this is really for, as people pick up this tool and have not maybe listened to this session, they can still use it. They can still grab this tool and scan that QR code real quick, listen to, I think it's like a minute and a half audio of me just explaining kind of the what, the and the why of this and how to use it. And then they can jump right in and start using it and use it over and over as many times as they want in lots of different ways as it relates to science instructional resources. So what you're looking at here as you get into the chart on this first page, the criterion, like I mentioned, those 6 criterion that are listed there, those are all direct language from NGSS from that lesson screener. So it aligns. If you go to look at this and you go back to the lesson screener or to equip, you're going to see the same language because this content is their content. We're just making it in an easy to use format. So you'll see it's broken down by criterion. So for example, in that first row there, you have explaining phenomena or designing solutions, right? That's a criterion that they have. Then you have guiding questions there for each of those criterion. So for example, you have 2, question 1 and question 2 for each of those 6 criterion. So for explaining phenomenon and or designing solutions, you have the first question of, does the lesson focus on supporting students to make sense of a phenomenon or design solutions to a problem? So if I were an educator looking at a resource, I would go through all 6 of these criterion and ask myself these questions. I may even ask the vendor or the publisher, who is right there at their booth at a Caravan or at a conference. I may even ask them those questions, right? If I'm looking at the materials and I'm not able to answer those questions myself, but these are the guiding questions to really begin to start thinking about whether or not the resource that's in your hand, that's in front of you, is going to align to these 6 criterion. And then you can move on to that second question. Is there evidence that either student problem solving or sense making a phenomenon drives the lesson? And so then you have that yes, no, like if someone was wanting to use this and kind of as a checklist, then they could use that. Does it meet the criterion or does it not, right? And they may be able to meet criterion 1 question, but not 2. So does it fully meet that criterion? Does it partially meet that criterion? Does it not meet it at all? Because they really want to start looking for resources as a starting point that are going to meet all 6 of these criterion. So then they would just walk through this chart as they look at that material, and they could use these questions again and as a way to have conversation with that vendor and be able to have very specific questions to ask them, which is what I love about this tool. And it's very quick and easy to use so that you feel like you don't have to spend 30 minutes having a conversation with a vendor, but you can still get a fairly good idea as to whether or not you can answer these questions for all 6 of these criteria pretty quickly. And then it would be very easy to kind of keep track of that in whatever way they feel comfortable doing so. Then you'll notice at the bottom of that chart, there is, it says click here for information on the NGSS developed resources used to create this quick reference guide and to learn more about the NGSS criterion. I will show you that. Actually, let me just show you that now. So that will take you to this document. Again, these will be in PDF form in the on the website tied to the tools themselves as well. Right now, they're just in my Google Drive as documents, but they will be on the site. So if you click that link at the bottom of the first tool, then this is where it's going to take you. And again, we couldn't get this to fit on a single page, but this is valuable information and information that teachers could go to on their own time to really learn more about those 6 criteria, right? So in tool 1, we're asking these questions about these 6 very specific criterion. And for each of these criterion, they can go to this document, which again, this is not our content. This is the NGSS content. We've just organized it in a usable way for you all, and really pulled out the things to have that conversation at those caravans, but then to dive deeper as necessary for our educators to feel like they have the deeper information at their fingertips. So that's what this is. It dives into, specifically what those criterion details are. So for example, for criterion A was the one I gave the example of, explaining phenomenon or designing solutions. For those, the lesson focuses on supporting students to make sense of phenomenon or design solutions to a problem, generally speaking, right? So you can see kind of how those are laid out. Then you can also see kind of what does an NGSS high quality lesson look like by criterion. So these are really nice because it shows you an NGSS design lesson would look less like this and more like this. So for example, if you look at this criterion A chart there for explaining phenomenon or designing solutions, on the left-hand column, you see one that says it would look less like this, and on the right, it would look more like this. So if a teacher is honing in on trying to understand of the materials that I'm looking at specific to criterion A, explaining phenomenon or designing solutions, what am I looking for, right? Specifically, what am I looking for? And what do these lessons within this instructional material look like if it is more aligned to NGSS? So this is where they can use these charts to really kind of dive in and understand, okay, so that's what that would look like if it was more aligned specific to criterion A. So then that goes through each of the criterion. There ends on F there on this page. And then we've even pulled together some additional resources here in this box for diving even further into criterion understanding. So you'll see there's additional information for A, B, C, D, and F in that box with various links. So again, all linked back out to things from NGSS. You just don't have to go find them. They're here for you. And then of course you have the additional references that we use to build this, as well as the tool itself linked out in the bottom. We also linked out some additional vetted resources there in the bottom for additional review. All right, so let me go back to the tool itself. All right, so we talked about the scan QR, the directions at the top there, the understanding how they can use this kind of chart, and then additionally what that link is there at the very bottom for the additional information was the document that I just showed you. So that's tool one. I'm gonna pause here just for a second and see if there's any questions in the chat. And make sure I don't have anyone waiting in the waiting room. Okay, great. All right, so feel free to drop questions if you have something specific to these resources or anything I'm talking about today. Feel free to drop that into the chat. I should have said that at the beginning, or feel free to email me at the end as well. All right, so tool two. So these again are designed as one-pagers so that it's easy for schools if you want to print them off for your educators, so that you could do one on each side of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Then you could easily do it that way. What this second tool is all about, it's about claims that vendors make. Okay, so as educators, it's so easy, and I know I've been there, to walk into a caravan or to walk into a conference, into a room with all these vendors and all these great resources, and they're all super shiny, and they all say NGSS aligned, and they have all these keywords and buzzwords, and they're all claiming something, right, in their marketing or right on their cover of their materials or what have you, or on their website. So it's really easy to kind of get distracted from all the shiny things, all the buzzwords and talks of alignment and correlation and things like that. So NGSS actually has a report and some documentation around these claims, and a significant body of research around all of that. So what we did for this second page of this tool is we felt that it would be beneficial for educators walking into a science caravan or into a conference looking for materials, et cetera, to have some guiding questions and know what it is that they're looking at when it comes to these claims that vendors make. And it doesn't necessarily mean that this claim is a good claim or that claim is a bad claim. And not all claims are created equal in either direction, good, bad, or ugly. But it's just a sense of awareness for our educators to know and what to expect. And then once they see it, to know what questions they might want to ask in regard to those claims, to dive a little bit deeper and ask some very pointed questions so that they can find out if someone is claiming, for example, that they are, their correlation chart shows that they are directly aligned to NGSS. Then they can dive a little deeper into that and ask some very pointed questions so that they know and understand what specifically that means. Not at the surface level, but deeply. What are they claiming that it's actually directly aligned, and how is it aligned, for example? So that's what this page is all about. There's actually an additional link at the bottom of this one as well that will take you to information on quality claims. And I'll show you that document for further learning and diving a little bit deeper into these claims as well. The NGSS provides a lot of additional information about kind of what does a quality claim look like. And I'll show you that innovation document as well. So this tool, NGSS claims and guiding questions to ask publishers and vendors. Again, same video. You don't have to do it twice. That QR code is just that audio tour about these tools. But what you'll see on this tool is you have a claim category. So you've got buzzwords, authority by association, alignment or correlation, and then the designed for the NGSS are all the claims, right? They kind of categorized through their research. These are the kind of 5 buckets that claims fall in. I have a definition there from the NGSS content of how they define that claim. So for example, a buzzword is a word that represents critical aspects of science education. It could be part of quality claims. So when I show the document about quality claims, there could be pieces of it, but because they're used so frequently and in so many different contexts, their meaning has become obscured. So buzzwords, we all know what buzzwords are, right? And people use them and throw them around a lot. And sometimes they can back them up and sometimes they cannot. So the next column in this tool is what would that claim potentially look like or sound like? So what might that vendor be saying to you as an educator to kind of try to sell you their product? Or what might you see on the actual materials that could be considered a buzzword? So an example of that might be students will learn with inquiry-based instruction, or our materials, through our materials, students will learn, phenomena-based instruction. So they're using phenomena, inquiry-based, NGSS, 3D, et cetera. They're using the buzzwords, right? But just saying that isn't enough for us to be like, oh, okay, well, I should adopt this material. You have to dive deeper. So through these guiding questions that we've provided, hopefully this will spark that conversation and give teachers something that they can launch with if they see those buzzwords being used, without just seeing the shiny thing, seeing the buzzword, hearing the buzzword, and then making the assumption that it is what they're looking for in terms of what materials they want to adopt. So those guiding questions, for example, with buzzwords, to ask the vendor might be, can you explain your definition of whatever the buzzword is, right? So if they're claiming that students are going to learn through phenomenon-based instruction, then talk to them about that. And, you say that your students will learn through phenomenon-based instruction, utilizing your instructional materials. Can you talk to me or explain to me what that means to you? How are you defining phenomenon education? They should be able to respond to that. Ask them for specific examples of how they could show you how the materials meet that claim. So there's just that's what that last column is. So some guiding questions around that claim that vendors make that our educators can use to have that conversation with them. And then it does the same thing as you move into authority, association, alignment, correlation, or design for the NGSS. Provide some suggestions around like spot checking several of the claim connections to the standards to verify to what degree materials address the part of the standard claimed. If sometimes, for example, with design for the NGSS, sometimes the claim will actually call out the equip rubric. If they do that, then the teacher can ask for a copy of the completed rubric. If they say, well, we scored this or met this on the equip rubric, then they should have a copy of that, or they should be able to provide you with that. So this tool, this page of the tool, is really about helping educators to go into a textbook caravan or to a conference and look at materials, or even look at materials online, and to kind of get past those buzzwords and to really dive a little deeper into, for example, if they're claiming authority, if they're claiming NGSS authors are their content experts, or that their advisory committee for their product included so-and-so who is on the NGSS writing team. This provides some specific guiding questions for them to be able to dive deeper and ask, because NGSS knows through the research that lots of vendors, lots of publishers use these methods, buzzwords, authority, by association, alignment, correlation, and design by the NGS or for the NGSS to try to get people to go, oh, well, it must be aligned. I don't really need to dive in and do my own analysis because it says that it's aligned to this, that, or the other. So that's what this page is really about, is just giving the tools to our educators so that they feel like they have the questions to ask in hand. And they already know upfront kind of, hey, I know that these are the things that these vendors are going to have on their marketing materials. They're going to say these things, but I know what to ask them to dive deeper so that I can really make some educated decisions around what resources I really want to consider for adoption. So again, at the bottom of this page of the tool is the click here for information on quality claims and to access the NGSS resources used to develop the tool. So I'm going to show you that now, where that links you out to, similarly to what I showed you on the previous one as well.
It looks like it's just the two of us now. This
okay.
is Christine. So I'm going to go ahead and share my video since it's just me. I'm looking rather tired. So, I think we met perhaps at were you at the Blitz? So I may know you. So where are you? Because I missed the first 20 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we are, I am showing the tools that were created by the STEM Synergy Expert Network. And this is being recorded, so you'll be able to go back and watch the first 20 minutes. But I talked initially about kind of the what and the why, and then what NGSS tools are out there where we really pulled content to develop these tools. And then why did we do this? So that's really what we kind of talked about in the first part. And now I'm just showing that those two one-pager tools that we created that you can really grab and either print out or you can use like on your device as you walk into a textbook caravan that's going to be aligned to all the great stuff that NGSS has in their tools. But those tools are just so huge that you can't, as an educator, like take all that and walk into a textbook caravan and really do anything with it. So that was really where the ask came from, was we need a tool that we can use when we go into these textbook caravans, or if we go to a conference and we're walking through talking to these vendors, like how do we know what questions to ask them? How do we know, do we have a checklist of something? So that's where these tools kind of got developed. So I've already covered all that stuff. So now I'm just kind of showing the tools and then answering any questions. So this one is, and like I said, this session will be recorded. And so you'll be able to go back and review it as well. So it'll post after as a, no longer obviously as a live, but as a recorded session as well for people to view. So this is the NGSS innovation claim. So at the bottom of the second page of the tool, with the claims and questions ask vendors and providers. That's where you're going to link to this. So this is what NGSS calls kind of the quality claims. They call them innovation claims. So that's what this page is we just pulled the content over from NGSS and we put it all in one location for you all to access. So this document will be linked in that bottom link in the second tool at the very bottom. So again, this walks through each of the, you'll see here, each of the different areas and gives you, so for example, that making sense of phenomena and designing solutions to problems, common language, back from the tool. And it will give you kind of that example claim and example evidence. So what you might be looking for in order to say, yes, this is a quality claim or what they call an innovation claim. So that's what that document links back out to at the bottom of page 2 of the tools here at the bottom. Okay, so let me now go back to my chat. Okay, great. All right. So those are the tools that we created, the quick reference tool and then the claims with the guiding questions. And I want to make sure that you all also have the link I dropped in the chat for the science textbook Caravans. This shows you just a little image of what that'll take you to. If you go to that link, you'll see all the different dates and locations for those caravans. They're all across the state, starting in January 17th is the first one. And there's a link on the far right side for you to actually register for those. So the link that I provided in the chat will take you directly to a website or a page within the Keep In and Learning website that will look very similar to what you're seeing right here. And this will allow you to register for those different textbook caravans. Definitely recommend taking the tools that I'm going to share out that will be located on the Keep In and Learning website with you. It is very likely it's going to be shared with all of these ESCs. So it's very likely I'm going to recommend to them that they just have printed copies there for educators to grab. But if not, there will definitely be a way for you to get access to it through the Keep In and Learning website and or STEM Synergy website. If for some reason you cannot access it, then you can always shoot me an email and I will send you a direct link as well. And my contact information is at the end of these slides. So I always like to wrap up with a call to action, things that I think, next steps that I think that you should take. First, I would say review those updated frameworks for the science standards and the individual science standards for your grade levels and courses. Knowing that you are going to be making some selections around those instructional materials leading into next year so that you can get the things ordered that you need to get ordered and or leading into those textbook caravans starting in January. Secondly, I would download the modified tools that I've shared today that we've created at STEM Synergy and have them handy. Definitely, earmark the link once it's up live on the Keep In and Learning website and visit it often, download it and have a copy there with you, because anytime that you go to look at a science related instructional material, whether it is a new textbook, a new workbook, you're even looking at digital instructional materials that you're looking to potentially adopt, open educational resources, you still want to make sure that they are aligned to these components. So it's always a good starting point when you're looking to adopting anything instructional related as it relates to science. Third, I would say familiarize yourself with those comprehensive NGSS tools, so the larger tools, the Equip tool, the lesson screener from NGSS that I've linked into the session today, that all the content for our tools came from. You're definitely going to want to eventually, before you write that check, pay for like a large purchase of new science textbooks or a curriculum, you are going to want to work together with a team and dive into the lesson screener and or the Equip tools. That's definitely the recommendation, is not to just take this quick assessment and then run with it. but use this as a starting point, as an initial, do I want to dive deeper into this curriculum resource, textbook, etc.? Or can I cross it off my list to begin with because it can't even meet this, right? So if it can meet these tools, then you know it's aligned to NGSS and you can take the next step, right? To fully vet it and fully say, is it where it needs to be fully? So that we want to invest in this resource and use this with our students. And then lastly is just to have a plan and a timeline. It's December, it's going to very rapidly be May. And, when our teachers walk out the door for summer, of course, we always want to make sure we have all of our requests for orders and things in as building leaders so that we can make sure that they have everything that they need well in advance to be able to have time to dive into those, hopefully even yet in the summertime, and they're not coming in day one with students trying to go through and build out their plan. So have a plan, have a timeline as it relates to using these tools, but then taking the time to really dive into a full vetting of whatever resource you decide to go with prior to purchasing with the full equip and lesson screener tools from NGSS. And again, if you have any questions or need some additional support around science or anything else STEM related, feel free to reach out. My email address is here on the screen. You can also reach me by going to the Keep Indiana Learning website and going to STEM Synergy. My contact information is there. Always happy to jump on a call and strategize or provide support around this as well. And thank you so much for being here, and feel free to reach out. Thank you.